The movie starts with Del Scott driving Philip in Chicago. They are chased by police when Del speeds up. Del bets Philip he can lose the cops, and he does briefly until they corner him. They force Del out, but he tells them he's rushing to the hospital because Philip is having a seizure. They see Philip foaming at the mouth, and the cops escort them, but it's a fake, and they laugh at fooling the cops. 6 months earlier, Del, a recently released convict, meets his parole officer. She tells him to get signatures by the next day. Del goes to different workplaces just for the signatures. His last stop is Philip's home, where Philip, a quadriplegic, is looking for a caregiver. Del waits for over an hour and interrupts an interview, saying he has to meet his son. Philip wants to hear Del's story and asks why he was in prison. Del tries to dodge the question and focuses on getting a job offer instead. Philip offers him the job, but Del turns it down because he's only interested in getting a signature. Philip suggests Del to consider the job offer and return the next day. If he still doesn't want the job, they will sign the papers. Later, Del goes to pick up his son, Anthony, from school but learns that his ex-wife already took him. When Del visits Anthony and his ex-wife, Latrice, they show little interest in him because he's been absent for most of Anthony's life. Del gives Anthony a storybook for his birthday, which he took from Philip's place. Del then asks Latrice if he can stay the night, but she refuses and asks him to leave. The next day, Del surprises Yvonne by saying he wants the job, but she's worried about Del's criminal past and how he'll handle Philip, but Del assures her he can do it. Yvonne sets up a 3-strike rule for Del to avoid mistake. Del's first task is to move Philip from bed to chair, but he forgets to buckle him, almost causing an accident. Del struggles at first, slow to respond to Philip's needs and finding tasks like feeding him difficult. He meets Maggie, Philip's nurse, who teaches him how to care for Philip physically. Maggie demonstrates how to use a catheter, which makes Del uncomfortable. She reminds him that if he can't handle this, how will he manage other tasks? Del complains to Yvonne, saying he won't do that, but she tells him it's part of the job and gives him his first strike. Philip insists Del follow a strict DNR rule if he stops breathing, meaning he won't try to bring him back to life. The next morning, Del oversleeps and earns his second strike when Yvonne has to wake him to care for Philip. Gradually, Del improves, helping Philip with tasks like organizing mail. When it's time to take Philip to an art gallery, Del decides to use one of his cars instead of the wagon. At the art gallery, Philip buys a painting for $80,000. On the way back, Del questions why he'd spend so much. Philip explains it's part of a collection, like books from his wife, one for each year they were together. When Del gets his first paycheck, he gives it all to Latrice and Anthony. Latrice is somewhat pleased until Del asks for the book back from Anthony, upsetting her again. Del goes to find Anthony but sees him with a suspicious older man. Before he can talk to Anthony, he gets a text from Yvonne and has to leave. When Del returns, Yvonne tries to fire him for his third strike, but Philip intervenes, explaining Del's absence was approved. Later, the DNR test comes into play when Philip seems to be suffocating. Despite risking his job, Del administers oxygen to Philip, saving his life. Del takes Philip around the city and shares a joint with him to ease his pain. During their outing, Philip opens up about his accident that left him paralyzed, caused by a paragliding incident with his late wife, Jenny. Del tries to lift Philip's spirits by discussing potential business ideas. On the way home, Del asks Philip if his dad gave him all his money. Philip says no, he earned it all himself. Del mentions his dad was a con artist. One day, while organizing Philip's mail, Del finds out Philip has a pen pal named Lily Foley. He calls Lily's number from Philip's letters, but gets her voicemail. Del convinces Philip to leave a message for Lily, asking her to call back. Philip joins Del as he takes Anthony out for the day. When Del asks Anthony for the book back, Anthony realizes it's Philip's and returns it. Returning home, they discover a surprise birthday party organized by Yvonne for Philip, which he doesn't want. He orders Yvonne to dismiss the guests, sparking an argument with Del. This causes Del to break things to help Philip feel better. Eventually, they agree to let the party continue, and Dell even convinces Yvonne to join in the dancing. Meanwhile, Philip's neighbor, Carter, raises concerns about Dell's criminal record, but Philip brushes them aside. Yvonne then informs Philip that Lily has returned his call and wants to arrange a dinner date. A few days later, Dell accompanies Philip to a restaurant for the date. During the meal, Philip gives Dell a $50,000 check for a painting, advising him to invest it wisely. Lily arrives and confesses that she knows about Philip's condition, saying Dell doesn't need to be here to assist Philip. Despite the initial awkwardness, they proceed with the dinner. But during dinner, she confesses that Philip's situation is more complicated than she expected. Philip is quite offended and tries to leave, but he accidentally bumps into the waiter, causing him to spill hot coffee on his lap. They are worried that he might be burnt, but Philip insists he can't feel a thing. Dell takes Philip home, but Philip chastises him for arranging the date with Lily, feeling foolish. They get into an argument, and he fires Dell. Time passes, and Dell uses Philip's check to secure a better apartment for Latrice and Anthony. He finds a new job but is approached by Maggie, who explains Philip's condition is bad and Yvonne also left. She believes Dell can reach him. Dell seeks out Philip, who appears unkempt. He takes him for a drive, leading to their encounter with the police and the fake seizure. They escape before the nurses arrive, and Dell keeps driving until they find a peaceful spot for Philip to relax. Dell plans a paragliding outing to help Philip overcome his fear, but ends up joining him. Later, Dell surprises Philip by arranging for Yvonne to visit them. While they catch up, Dell goes to his wife and Anthony.